Chapter 51 to 52. Steel is my body, and fire is my blood. I have created over 1,000 blades, unknown to death, nor known to life. Have withstood pain to create many weapons, yet those hands will never hold anything. So as I pray, unlimited blade works. As Shirou completed the final invocation of unlimited blade works, his 27 magic circuits cried out in pain as they were drained of all their magical energy. Crack, crack, crack. The epic struggle for dominance in the world of the heavens and earth was suddenly disrupted as an otherworldly force descended upon the scene, manifesting itself in the form of a colossal gear that materialized behind Shirou, looming ominously behind him, hinting at the immense power it held. Waver, who was struggling to maintain the magical energy for Iskandar's activity, was left speechless as he stared at the scene before him. It's also a reality marble?" he exclaimed in shock. A reality marble, or innate bounded field, is the materialization and projection of one's inner world onto reality. When activated, a reality marble drastically alters the surrounding space, transforming it into a completely different landscape. Reality marbles are created worlds that are completely cut off from normal reality. They project the internal landscape of the user and seal off the regular world. According to the world egg theory, the actualization of a reality marble is achieved by switching the position of the self and the world while keeping the boundary the same. This causes the size of the self to expand, enclosing the world in a small container. Throughout history, there have been very few magi with reality marble, but now not only does his rider possess a reality marble, but that caster also has one. The appearance of two reality marbles at once is an incredibly rare occurrence, akin to a mythological story. And now, Waver found himself witnessing these two powerful reality marble about to face off in front of him. "You want to use your noble phantasm to fight against mine? Very well, I approve," Iskandar bellowed with laughter. Crack, crack, crack. The massive gear hung suspended in the sky behind Shirou, its gears turning relentlessly, and in the blink of an eye, the world behind him was transformed. A crimson desert stretched out as far as the eye could see, littered with countless swords, while the horizon flickered with the dancing flames of an inferno. The dark, ominous sky was dominated by giant gears spinning in a never-ending cycle, resembling a world of smelting factories. In an instant, the reality was split in two. But Shirou's forehead was slick with cold sweat as he activated the reality marble Unlimited Blade Works. He could feel the Ionioi Hetairoi constantly eroding his mental landscape. Once the erosion was complete, Shirou feared that his Unlimited Blade Works would be completely consumed by Ionioi Hetairoi. "Spartacus, protect me, and I will protect you in return." "Together, we are invincible!" Shirou bellowed, his mind focused and at his command. The swords that lay scattered across the crimson desert behind him rose up, soaring through the air like arrows from the heavens, hurtling toward the soldiers surrounding Spartacus. The soldiers, caught off guard by the sudden attack, could do little to defend themselves as the swords rained down upon them, slicing through armor and flesh with ease. Some tried to raise their shields in an attempt to block the onslaught, but it was to no avail as the swords cut through them as if they were made of paper. Iskandar let out a deep laugh. "Are you trying to challenge this king? Are you trying to fight with me, caster? Ha 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 ha! I approve!" His expression then became serious as he commanded, "Formation 1, conquer! 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 Conquer!" Shirou's face was covered in sweat as he watched the soldiers divide into 3 light infantry and charge toward him. The soldiers of the Ionioi Hetairoi were formidable, following Iskandar's conquest throughout his life, and Shirou knew he was outnumbered. Despite this, he had the Unlimited Blade Works at his disposal, which held thousands of swords copied from the heroic spirit Emiya. Even so, among these soldiers, there was no shortage of talented individuals with servants-level reactions. Shirou shouted. "Berserker! The oppressors are here!" "Oh, oh, oh, oh!" Spartacus, towering at an impressive 20 meters tall, leaped into the space of unlimited blade works with a single bound. His formidable muscle strength propelled him forward as he swept his giant sword, decimating the light infantry that charged toward Shirou. Using his body as a shield, blocking the army that attempted to conquer Shirou's world. Shirou raised his hand and dozens of swords flew into the sky, penetrating the dense area of the Ionioi Hetairoi. Then, broken phantasm! Boom, 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 oh! In a split second, there was a deafening series of explosions as countless soldiers were vaporized by the blast. But instead of cowing them, the display of power only seemed to invigorate the enemy troops as they charged forward, eager to conquer the world. They rushed towards Shirou with unbridled ferocity, their eyes alight with the thrill of battle. Conquer! Advance! Conquer! Excitement and fanaticism burned within the army like religious fervor. They advanced like a swarm of ants, a formidable force that shook the earth and sky. Spartacus swung his giant sword, clearing a path through the approaching light troops. Shirou, too, drew sword after sword, slicing through the dense ranks of soldiers. He unleashed broken phantasm, cutting down one soldier after another. This was a war of individuals and groups, a war of giants and armies, a war of worlds, a battle between an unmatched elephant and a fanatical ant swarm. Explosions rumbled on, filling the air with smoke. The ground was littered with broken corpses and weapons, blood soaking into the earth. Death loomed on the edge where the two worlds collided. Morals and laws had long been forgotten, replaced by the wildness and brutality of humanity that now consumed the entire space. The war of reality. Marbles. This magnificent and wild scene was deeply etched in Waver's eyes. It pierced through his small and insignificant world like a sword and arrow. Waver's world was once defined by Magecraft, papers, and the desire for respect and self-validation. However, his small perspective is now being shattered as he is exposed to the harsh realities and the magnificent clash in front of him. It's as if he's been a frog living at the bottom of a well, only to be suddenly lifted out and given a glimpse of the vast expanse of the true world. He wants to witness. He yearns to continue to bear witness to the unfolding of this modern myth, to see it through to the end. But, Waver groaned as he clutched his chest, his face contorted in pain. His magic circuits were overloading, sapping his energy, and a fiery heat was consuming him as if it would burn him to ashes. No, it can't be. I want to see it to the end. That's enough, caster, Iskandar bellowed as he pulled back the Ionioi Hetairoi. Waver gazed up at Iskandar, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. With bitterness in his voice, he spat out, "I can still fight. I can still go on. How can you give up?" Before he could finish his sentence, Iskandar whirled around, placing a massive hand on Waver's head and grinning widely, revealing a row of shining white teeth. "There's no need to push yourself so hard. You're still young, and the journey ahead is long. Take your time, and don't rush it." Shirou deactivated unlimited blade works, his face glistening with sweat and his eyes weary. He looked at Iskandar and asked, "How could you withdraw first, Iskandar? As you know, I am caster. Weren't you afraid that I could have killed you just now?" Iskandar laughed loudly. "If I were afraid, I wouldn't be Iskandar." His words may sound confident, but in reality, he had already come to the realization that continuing to fight in this manner would only result in mutual destruction. Shirou sighed in his heart. This king of Conqueror may appear rough and ignorant, but in fact his thoughts were quite subtle, and he was well aware of the benefits. It's no surprise that he was able to achieve the great accomplishment of conquering over 5 million square kilometers. "I concede this defeat gracefully. I have lost this time." Iskandar said with a carefree laugh before mounting his beloved horse. He scooped Waver up by the collar and slung him over his shoulder before riding off. "Fool! Fool! I still have command seals! I still have command seals! How can you lose?" Waver's distant voice could be heard yelling. Shirou breathed a sigh of relief. If the fight had continued, he would have been forced to use command seals to supplement his magical energy and fight a war of attrition. However, "We can win!" Shirou clenched his fist. "With the power of unlimited blade works and Spartacus, victory is within our reach." Spartacus. He looked at Spartacus, which had expanded to almost 30 meters. Oh, weakling! Shirou reached out and touched the giant sword that he had projected, looked up at the giant face of Spartacus, now missing one eye, and said, "You are my sword and shield. I am your eyes and mind. This sword is the symbol of our partnership. Together we will defeat the cruel and oppressive ones and win this Holy Grail War. Cruel ones, oppressors, weak ones." Spartacus possessed immense magical energy, but it was volatile and uncontrolled. As a result, his rationality suffered, and he became increasingly unable to articulate his thoughts. Despite this, he retained the power to lead the oppressed towards freedom. Shirou glanced at the colossal, bloated Spartacus, towering at almost 30 meters in height. He understood that if Spartacus were to enter the city, the secret of the Holy Grail War would be exposed, and he couldn't allow that to happen. For now, he can only hide Spartacus here and use the forest to conceal him. He looks at the giant sword that he had projected and couldn't help but feel proud of himself. The giant sword he had projected was perfectly suited for Spartacus. "Victory! I can achieve victory! Because I am no longer alone!" Shink! The main hall of the church fell silent as the piercing sound of a blade ringing through the night air echoed through the room. Lying on his back, the supervisor of the Fourth Holy Grail War, Kotomina Risei, had a blade made of mercury protruding from his abdomen. Blood immediately began to pour from the wound, staining the ground beneath him. "You!" Risei, now weak, lifted his head and looked up to see Kaneth's face, expressionless, as if nothing had occurred. "Reciprocity is the name of the game," Kaneth stated. "And let me tell you, as a supervisor, secretly aligning yourself with the Tosaka family, this is a punishment straight from the heavens." Risei's eyes finally came to rest on Kaneth as the latter stowed away his volumen hydragyrum before Risei collapsed and slipped into unconsciousness, not to wake again. "Kaneth, we can't find the St. Graph." Kaneth's fiancée, Sola, searched the entire church, but still could not find the objective of their visit, the St. Graph. Has that old man hidden it or given it to that scoundrel? Kaneth's eyebrows knitted together in frustration before smoothing out as he continued. "Forget it, Sola. It's just a minor game. Our opponents are nothing but a group of backwater magi. Even without the St. Graph, I can easily emerge victorious. But this way, it will be difficult to find the vessel," Sola said. "No worries. It's simply a question of effort and strategy. Kaneth El Meloy Archibald can accomplish anything with just a bit of thought," Kaneth said with a nonchalant expression. Kaneth's life had always been one of ease, envied by others and admired by many. Being a genius was a title that came naturally to him, and there was nothing he couldn't accomplish with a bit of thought and strategy. "Lancer, where do you believe that valuable research vessel is being kept?" Sola's eyes shifted to Diarmuid, inquiring. Kaneth's face turned ashen. Diarmuid sighed inwardly and remained silent. "Ha!" Suddenly, Diarmuid's eyes widened, and he turned his head, gazing out of the window towards the southeast. "Master, I sense Castor's presence nearby." "It seems we've been beaten to the punch. Is it the Tosaka family? Humph. Even those small-time nobles from the countryside dare to try and take that precious vessel from me? Don't even think about it." "That vessel is mine, and mine alone," Kaneth exclaimed with disdain. He looked at Sola and added, "It belongs to me and Lady Sola." As Cainith prepared to depart the church, Sola looked at the blood-soaked Risei and asked, "Aren't you going to finish him off? If he's still alive, he'll report this to the Holy Church, and it could lead to unpleasant consequences for you. I may not be a battle magus, but I am not much weaker than them. Cainith does not require a second strike when it comes to killing." With that, Cainith and Diarmuid made their way toward the suburban forest at a sprint. Upon reaching their destination, Diarmuid charged ahead while Cainith unleashed his Volumen Hydragyrum, a unique supreme mystic code created from mercury filled with Magecraft. He prepared to infiltrate slowly with a cool, collected smile on his face. But then, boom, 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 boom! The ground trembled, and in the next instant, a massive arm emerged from the ground, resembling a giant hand that covered the sky and blocked out the sun, striking Diarmuid with its force. Boom! Ah! With the ease of a human swatting a mosquito, Diarmuid was struck by the giant arm and sent flying. His body fell like a meteor, causing a splash in the nearby sea before crashing into the ruins on the other side. His condition was unknown. This... Cainith stared in shock at the scene, his jaw agape. Cainith, let's retreat for now. You're right, Sola. Let's retreat strategically. We'll come back another day, Cainith said as he and Sola turned and fled the scene. The giant hand that emerged from a mythological legend, the true identity of this monster remained a mystery. It was wise to retreat strategically. Retreat strategically. Shirou looked up in the direction where Diarmuid had been struck and muttered to himself, "Just now, there was a sudden presence of a servant, but now it's gone. What happened?" With a sense of uncertainty, Shirou turned his gaze to the towering presence of Spartacus and couldn't help but feel a sense of security. He had to admit, the feeling of being protected and safe made Shirou feel incredibly good. Despite Scathach's refusal to materialize and the unexpected nature of this war, he had still found someone he could rely on for safety. However, the current form of Spartacus should not be underestimated. Otherwise, it would lead to disastrous consequences. But this doesn't mean that he can't do anything. Swords and shields are responsible for fighting and protecting, while as the eyes and brains, it is necessary to discern direction and devise a strategy for victory. Shirou is by no means a skilled strategist. He is just an ordinary person who has been thrust into the stage of heroes. He doesn't possess great wisdom, but he is consistently resourceful. He relies on having read the script and understanding his opponent's characters, especially when the opponent is already trapped. Thus, Shirou already knows what he should do next. "Kiritsugu, if it were you, you would have definitely noticed, right?" Shirou's low voice echoed in the darkness. Dawn has come. Kirei, who emerged from the basement, finally discovered the unconscious Risei lying in a pool of blood. "Father." As Kirei rushed over to his father's side, he gazed upon Risei's ashen complexion, unsure of what words to offer in this moment of grief. The thought of someone brutally taking the life of the man who had placed so much trust in him should have ignited a fiery rage within him, yet Kirei felt nothing but a numbing emptiness. He knew he should be filled with anger and hatred, yet as he tried to summon those emotions, Kirei found his heart to be as still as a tranquil sea, with no ripples. A disturbing and irrational thought crossed his mind. If death is inevitable, why not let me be the one to end your suffering? Kirei was both horrified and fascinated by this thought, and the conflicting emotions brought him pain and confusion. He couldn't understand why he would even entertain such a notion, yet he couldn't shake it off. He felt lost in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, unsure of how to reconcile them. He was born on December 28, 1967, while his father Risei was away on a pilgrimage. As he grew, he was trained as an executor under Risei's guidance during his teenage years. Risei had high expectations for his only child and son, and Kirei did not disappoint. He developed into a person of excellent character and ability. However, despite his achievements, Kirei was plagued by confusion in his heart. He couldn't quite grasp what his father meant by the beauty he always spoke of. He couldn't shake off the feeling that he was missing something important. As Kirei grew older, his confusion only deepened. He enrolled in the Theological College of Manresa, where he transitioned from trainee to executor who could operate independently, and received his second baptism ceremony. Despite graduating from college 2 years ahead of schedule as the top student, he still couldn't understand his purpose in life. He couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something missing, something he needed to understand. Kirei struggled to find his true path, as he couldn't see good things or happiness in the way most people did. In an effort to change his abnormality, he tried many things, including becoming an executor. His final attempt to find fulfillment was to start a family. He married a woman named Claudia Hortensia, who was suffering from a terminal illness and had only a few years left to live. During their 2-year marriage, Kirei worked hard to love his wife, and she in turn worked hard to make him love her. She was willing to do whatever it takes to help fix his abnormality. But in the end, Kirei still couldn't gain the happiness of a normal person through his wife. For him, happiness was derived from his wife's suffering. The more she wanted to help him, the more he wanted to see her suffer. This realization made Kirei even more desperate and lost. Claudia, to prove that Kirei could love and was a person with a right to be loved, committed suicide in front of him. But all Kirei could think was, if she was going to die anyway, I wish I could have killed her with my own hands. Kirei is consumed by sadness and often thinks back to that time. He can't decide whether his sorrow is because he couldn't enjoy his wife's death or because he loved her and wanted to end her suffering himself. Every time he thinks of this, his thoughts are interrupted by confusion and uncertainty. Perhaps the answer will elude him forever. However, it was also due to his wife's death that Kirei began to study spiritual healing Magecraft. Now, as he stands in front of his father's corpse, he is plagued by another question. He is filled with doubts, wondering if his sorrow at this moment is because he couldn't enjoy his father's death or because he couldn't kill his father himself. Suddenly, Gilgamesh appeared by Kirei's side and asked, "Are you awake?" Kirei, who was lost in his thoughts, was startled by Gilgamesh's sudden appearance and unsure of what he meant by the question. "I don't understand," Kirei said, looking at Gilgamesh in confusion. "This mongrel you still don't understand," Gilgamesh sneered as he retrieved a potion from his treasury. He poured it over Risei's injuries. "Your father's not dead yet. The mongrel who ambushed him is a foolish, arrogant imbecile who can't even use a blade properly. Use this as a remedy, and he'll survive." Gilgamesh then hurled a knife at Kirei's feet. Kirei looked at the knife, then let out a maniacal laugh. He clutched his head and slammed it against the ground. Thud! The holy scripture he held in his arms slipped from his grip and fell to the ground. Kirei paid it no heed and persisted in bashing his head against the ground. Thud, thud, thud! Blood and tears mingled as he laughed maniacally, the warmth of it running down the pages of the holy scripture. He snatched up the knife and snapped it in half with his bare hands, the sound of the breaking metal piercing the air. "Oh?" Gilgamesh said with interest. "You're finally awake?" Kirei's behavior and actions in the presence of his father's corpse reveal a disturbed and unstable state of mind. The laughter and violence he exhibits suggest a difficulty in processing his emotions, and the reasons behind his actions remain uncertain. Yes. I never really considered it. I always put my faith in God's beautiful teachings, but the reality is so chaotic." Kirei laughed, tears streaming down his face, his twisted smile becoming more pronounced. "I just don't understand. Why did you help me? You're clearly my teacher's servant." "Is that even a question?" sneered Gilgamesh. The so-called Savior's doctrine is steeped in false righteousness, trapping evil under the guise of hypocrisy. He continued, And as for Tokiomi, he's nothing but a traitor who attempted to overthrow his king. He is not worthy of being called a subject. Do you understand the truth about the Holy Grail? Kirei asked. Don't underestimate me. You're mongrel. When I was playing with those so-called gods, your ancestors hadn't even been born yet, Gilgamesh said contemptuously. That's true. Kirei lowered his head slightly. After 3 years of studying under Tokiomi, Kirei was also aware of the truth about the Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail War, in essence, is a grand scheme orchestrated by the Ainsburn, Tosaka, and Mato families, with the ultimate goal of reaching the root. The system is divided into the Greater Grail and the Lesser Grail. The Lesser Grail, the prize awarded to the winner of the Holy Grail War, is the object that the 7 groups of magi and heroic spirits fought for. It is believed to have the power to instantly grant any wish. However, in reality, it only serves to preserve the souls of deceased servants. The Holy Grail's true essence is a highly crystallized form of magical energy that has been stored in spiritual veins for 60 years. While it may be able to accomplish some simple wishes, its true power is limited, and it is nothing more than a lie. Why do you, as a king, protect that caster? Kirei asked. Is it simply because he is still a child? Or is there something more to it? Is he, like me? I may have a fondness for the pure soul of a child, but that is not the case with him. Gilgamesh shook his head. His soul is even dirtier and more chaotic than yours. But he is different from you. Kirei lowered his head slightly. I am still confused. I must go find Kiritsugu. That extremely purpose-driven man may be able to give me the answer. As Gilgamesh's figure gradually faded away, he spoke with a flourish. Mongrel affairs, unless they are ugly, have no bearing on this king. But mark my words, when I appear before you again, that is the true grand theater worth savoring with wine. Ha 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 ha. Kirei hugged Risei and headed to the hospital for treatment. The question that had once consumed him, he now had the answer to. He could not find pleasure in his father's death and was unable to kill him himself. These two options were not ways to fill the void inside of him, because no matter which one he chose, it would only serve to redeem his pitiful father, who until his death had believed in his son's righteousness without a shred of doubt. Kirei had come to understand his true self. The act of redeeming others could not quell the growing turmoil within him. Rather than allowing his pitiful father to hold on to the belief in his son's righteousness until his death, it would be more satisfying for Kirei to let his father witness the depth of his son's inner depravity and mercilessly shatter that trust. That, he thought, would bring true pleasure. Ha ha ha! Holding his face, as he imagined his father's collapse, his heart felt a mix of pleasure and pain, hot tears streaming down his face, twisted in a smile. His father, Risei, from the day Kirei was born, had dedicated himself to pursuing God's grace and beauty, dividing his soul in two. The good was on display and the evil was locked away. Kirei was never taught how to guide or release it. He was simply taught how to use the prison to trap the evil half of his soul. This trap had held him captive for 27 years. Only now did he truly understand the nature of his existence. Human nature is evil. For 27 years, he never guided or clarified his inner evil. Whether it was his father Risei or his teachers, they only degraded it and trapped it in his heart, without any outlet to vent. It continued to accumulate and brew, without any release, eventually forming the evil that consumed all that was good inside him. And this is why the Grail had chosen him. Could it truly be said that he was worthy of the Grail? He himself had been trapped in the righteous prison and forgotten the true sense of his existence. Yet the Grail had discovered it in an instant and bestowed upon him a curse. As Kirei walked out of the hospital, he summoned Assassin and asked him, "Is there any news of Kiritsugu's whereabouts?" "Yes," Assassin replied. "He was spotted by us when he was attacking Caster's master. He is currently on his way to the hospital where Caster's master is located." "I understand." Kirei nodded, and dismissed assassin. Kiritsugu holds a special significance to Kirei. This became apparent to him when he saw the information Tokiomi had obtained on Kiritsugu. He uses dirty and vile methods, and his actions and belief are vastly different from those of Magi. All actions appear aimless, but yet they have a grand goal. He is similar to Kirei, but yet vastly different. Kirei had once yearned to meet Kiritsugu, a man who was both similar and dissimilar to him, in order to gain a deeper understanding of himself. But now, he has finally found the answers he was searching for. Yet the realization is both comforting and difficult to accept. He desires to speak with Kiritsugu and seek validation for his newfound understanding. However, a face-to-face encounter is no longer his goal. Kirei made his way back to the basement of the church and utilized the Tosaka magical device to contact Tokiomi. "Teacher," he said, "I have completed a thorough investigation and have uncovered something suspicious regarding Castor." "What is it?" Tokiomi queried. "He is not a servant, but rather a being similar to a dependent spirit who has fused with his master and is participating in this war. The body that has been fused is that of Castor's master," Kirei revealed. "A fusion between human and servant? How is this possible? Such a thing is unprecedented. If the clock tower were to discover this kind of vessel, it would undoubtedly be sealed away." "Yes, that is why Lancer's master, the lord from the clock tower, is currently searching for the corpse of Castor's master," Kirei confirmed. "Where is his corpse?" "At the police hospital." "Good." As the sound of someone leaving echoed through the phonograph, the room fell silent. Kirei sat in the basement, engrossed in the Book of God. A smile suddenly appeared on his lips. Kirei wondered if the information was a blessing or a curse. Tokiomi didn't bother to ask where Kirei had obtained it, a fact that was crucial. He couldn't help but wonder how it would all play out in the end. Kirei's heart was in turmoil as he read the Book of God, with a mix of anticipation, pleasure, and waves of excitement. Generosity, tenacity, honesty, loyalty, diligence, justice, patience. In the dim and quiet basement, a voice resounded, reciting melodious words.